I am positive from day one, as a judge student, you have asked yourself, and you've been asking yourself this constantly, why in the world do I have to take a theology class? There's a billion ways that I can answer that, but I can only answer, as of right now, I can only answer the question, why in the world do I have to take an ethics class? It's not so that you know that you can start throwing around all of these different philosophical terms and talk about Aristotle with your friends and be all pompous. I don't want that. The purpose of these classes is for you to start making better decisions for yourselves and to lead an ethical life. I want you to follow Aristotle's recommendation and become a virtuous person. I don't want you to be incontinent, and I definitely do not want you to be vicious. So I added a couple of things that Aristotle is known for in his teachings to give you pointers as to making the best out of your life. Number 1, avoid the extreme that is more opposed to the mean. What does Aristotle mean by this? Oftentimes, the virtue is going to be between an excessive vice and a deficient vice. So here's an example. If you have somebody who doesn't exercise at all, and they become very unhealthy, that's a deficiency of exercise, right? That's bad. That's a vice. But at the same time, you have people who just exercise constantly to the point where it's really bad for them psychologically. Aristotle says, more often than not, one of those vices is closer to the virtue. So in that case, what's better for you? Over-exercising or not exercising at all? It's probably going to be over-exercising. But again, you don't want to risk becoming psychologically damaged by that. So in that case, you're getting closer to the virtue, but really you want to be able to strike a balance. But if that's not possible in the moment, then avoid the extreme that's more opposed to the virtue. All right, secondly, this is something that Aristotle is probably best known for, is this phrase, know yourself. A couple of times in this note sheet, I've mentioned individuality. A lot of what I talk about in ethics has to do with us as human beings, as a collective, as a whole. Sometimes that just doesn't work. And you need to know who you are as an individual and what works for you as an individual. I can't do that for every single one of you. I am fully aware that this method of teaching my classes is not working for a lot of you. And I know this method, for some of you, you prefer it for whatever reason. Maybe you like not having to be responsible for seeing my face during our class periods. Who knows? But some of this works for some people, and I apologize to anybody who's ever taken my class and just has not seen the value in it. I'm fully aware that my methods don't work on everyone. But you can only know that if you know yourself. Know what works for you, know what doesn't work for you, and respond accordingly. Especially when it comes to your vices. I personally, and I'm very grateful to God that this is the case, I personally do not have a sweet tooth. I'm not a fan of sweet things at all. And it seems that sugar is kind of it's the consensus worst thing for your body regarding food. So it's a really good thing that I don't have a desire to eat sweet things. I have to really, really be in the mood for it. But some other people have a desire, have a really bad sweet tooth. And if you put anything sweet in front of them, they will devour it in seconds. You may be more prone to certain vices than others. So you need to be aware of what your vices are, and you need to know how to respond when those vices are at your doorstep. Understand your tendencies, and by understanding your tendencies, you can work on becoming more virtuous. Here is something that I wholeheartedly endorse. Always be wary of pleasure, for all things, it is most likely to lead you astray. Here's the big misunderstanding that I think happens when we think about happiness. When I say what makes you happy, your immediately response is what gives me pleasure, not literally what makes me happy. So I'm very happy that Aristotle notices this as well. Pleasure itself is a good thing. The act of feeling good is a good thing. But it should only be a good thing, or it can only be an inherently good thing, if it's a consequence of something that you've done for another reason. If you're out there seeking pleasure for itself, you're going to be I guarantee you are going to be committing a vice. You are doing something that is bad for you, either health-wise or psychology-wise. Pleasant lives cannot be obtained by pursuit of pleasure alone. In order to have a happy and fulfilling life, you need to get out of the mindset that I want to pursue pleasure, period. Do things that you know are good for you, even if you don't want to do them, because they will lead you to happiness. If you don't, you're focusing too much on pleasure. And finally, this is not going to work immediately because it's a slow build. Aristotle has this thing called the bent stick remedy. What he's trying to say here is that who you are as an incontinent person or as an unvirtuous person needs to be fixed. And so an easy way to fix that is to become the complete opposite of who you are. Now, if you remember the idea of the spectrum, you know that the opposite of the spectrum is just as bad. Both extremes, both ends of the spectrums are vices. But if you try to be your opposite and you become too incontinent on the other side, then you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's kind of like riding a bike. And eventually, like a pendulum, you hit that middle. And then when you hit that middle, you have become virtuous. That pendulum swing of going back and forth helps a lot. We see this in the United States. Now, politics is vicious in both senses of the word. Because we have two opposite extremes and we don't have a good middle. We don't have a virtuous mean. We have a progressive left and a conservative right, and both sides seem to have been pretty awful for throughout American history. But the fact that we go back and forth between them, between these two vices, is actually a really good thing, because it means nothing gets done. They cancel each other out. Now, if we had a virtuous middle, then what would happen is good things would get done. But I think it's a lot better that nothing gets done than bad things getting done. And so it's a very good thing that we have that balance, but it's not ideal. And we want to keep on we want to keep on striving towards perfection. We want to reach happiness. We want to become good people. We want to become virtuous people. So moving forward, we're going to go back to Aristotle a lot. He's really important. We're going to go back to relativism a lot. Relativism is very important. But for now, what will happen is hopefully this will go up Wednesday night. As of now, it looks like everything is saving. So hopefully that continues to work. And so this will be up at least by Thursday morning. And so by Thursday night, maybe midnight, I want you to be all caught up on your notes. I want you to have watched all of the moral relativism notes, and I want you to have watched all of the Aristotle notes if I have to break this up into multiple parts. And then on Friday, we will dive into the ethical schools. and I'll give more instructions about that on Thursday. So, yeah, I will leave it there. I hope you all are doing all right. I hope you're not too bored, and I hope you're getting your work done. We'll talk to you all later, hopefully tomorrow, if not Friday. Have a good day, everybody.